Panacha Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivakacharya Astadata Zishi Mad Abhay Charnarvinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivakacharya Astadata Zishi Mad Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinata Shyama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan ki jai. Sri Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Sri Mayapur ki jai. Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai. Sri Harinam Sankirtana ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Readings from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 22, text number 19. Ato bhajishye samayena sadvim yavatejo bibriyad atmano me. Ato dharman paramahamsya mukyan Shukla proktan bahumanye vihimshran. Ato bhajishye samayena sadvim yavatejo bibriyad atmano me. Ato dharman paramahamsya mukyan Shukla proktan bahumanye vihimshran. Gentlemen. Ato bhajishe samayena sadvim yavatejo bibriyad atmano me. Ato dharmam paramahamsya mukyan Shukla proktan bahumanye vihimshran. Ato bijishe samayena sadvim. Yavat tejo bibriyadatmano me. Ato daban paramahamsya mukyan. Shukla proktan bahumanye vihimshran. Anybody else? Ato bajishe samayena sadvim. Yavat tejo bibriyadatmano me. Ato damam paramahamsya mukyan. Shukla proktan bahumanye vihimsha. Ladies? Ato bajishe samayena sadvim. Yavat tejo bibriyadatmano me. Ato damam parahamsya vanyam. Sukla proktam bahumanye vihimshran. Ato bajishe nasamyena sadvim. Yavet tejo bibriyadatmano me. Ato damam paramahamsya mukyan. Sukla proktan bahumanye vihimshran. Ato bajishe samayena sadvim. Yavat tejo bibriyadatmano me. Ato dharman paramahamsya mukyan. Sukla proktan bahumanye vihimshran. Ata. Therefore, bajishe, I shall accept. Samayena, on the conditions. Sadvim, the chaste girl. Yavat, until. Teja, semen. Bibriat, may bear. Atmana, from my body. May, my. Ata, thereafter. Dharman, the duties. Parahamsya mukyan, of the best of the Paramahamsas. Sukla proktan, spoken by Lord Vishnu. Bahu, much. Manye, I shall consider. Avihimshran, free from envy. Translation and purport by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Therefore, I shall accept this chaste girl as my wife, on the condition that after she bears semen from my body, I shall accept the life of devotional service accepted by the most perfect human beings. That process was described by Lord Vishnu, if it is free from envy. Please repeat. Therefore, I shall accept this chaste girl as my wife, on the condition that after she bears semen from my body, I shall accept the life of devotional service accepted by the most perfect human beings. That process was described by Lord Vishnu. It is free from envy. Purport. Kadamba Muni expressed his desire for a very beautiful wife to Emperor Swayambhuva and accepted the emperor's daughter for marriage. Kardama Muni was in the hermitage practicing complete celibacy as a brahmachari, and although he had the desire to marry, he did not want to be a householder for the whole span of his life,
because he was conversant with the Vedic principles of human life. According to Vedic principles, the first part of life should be utilized in brahmacharya for the development of character and spiritual qualities. In the next part of life, one may accept a wife and beget children, but one should not beget children like cats and dogs. Kardama Muni desired to beget a child who would be a ray of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One should beget a child who can perform the duties of Vishnu, otherwise there is no need to produce children. There are two kinds of children born of good fathers. One is educated in Krishna consciousness so that he can be delivered from the clutches of Maya in that very life, and the other is a ray of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and teaches the world the ultimate goal of life. As will be described in later chapters, Kardama Muni begot such a child, Kapila, the incarnation of the personality of Godhead, who enunciated the philosophy of Sankhya. Great householders pray to God to send his representative so that there may be an auspicious movement in human society. This is one reason to beget a child. Another reason is that a highly enlightened parent can train a child in Krishna consciousness so that the child would not have to come back again to this miserable world. Parents should see to it that the child born of them does not enter the womb of a mother again. Unless one can train a child for liberation in that life, there is no need to marry or produce children. If human society produces children like cats and dogs for the disturbance of social order, then the world becomes hellish, as it has in this age of Kali. In this age, neither parents nor their children are trained. Both are animalistic and simply eat, sleep, mate, and defend and gratify their senses. This disorder in social life cannot bring peace to human society. Kardama Muni explains beforehand that he would not associate with the girl Devahuti for the whole duration of his life. He would simply associate with her, missed the line. He would simply associate with her until she had a child. In other words, sex life should be utilized only to produce a nice child, not for any other purpose. Human life is especially meant for complete devotion to the service of the Lord. That is the philosophy of Lord Chaitanya. After fulfilling his responsibility to produce a nice child, one should take sannyas and engage in the perfectional Paramahamsa stage. Paramahamsa refers to the most highly elevated perfectional stage of life. There are 4 stages within sannyas life, and Paramahamsa is the highest order. The Srimad Bhagavatam is called the Paramahamsa Samhita, the treatise for the highest class of human beings. The Paramahamsa is free from envy. In other stages, even in the householder stage of life, there's competition and envy. But since the activities of the human being in the Paramahamsa stage are completely engaged in Krishna consciousness or devotional service, there is no scope for envy. In the same order as Kardama Muni, about 100 years ago, Thakur Bhaktivinoda also wanted to beget a child who could preach the philosophy and teachings of Lord Chaitanya to the fullest extent. By his prayers to the Lord, he had as his child Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, who at the present moment is preaching the philosophy of Lord Chaitanya throughout the entire world through his bona fide disciples. Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale. Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaudavani Pracharine. Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paskatati Shtarine. So, long verse, and I'd like to go through this text and purport a little bit systematically by first commenting on Kardama Muni's declaration in the first sentence, therefore, before he says all the rest of it, I shall accept this chaste girl as my wife on the condition that after she bears semen for my body, I shall accept the life of devotional service. So in order to understand this verse, we kind of have to go all the way back to where the conversation starts. Back in chapter 21. It's leading up to this verse. So, and this verse is kind of the conclusion that Kardama Muni made after this discussion between himself and Swayambhuva Manu about marrying his daughter. So I don't know if every one of you have attended all the classes yesterday and the day before and the day before and the day before, so that you have read all this. But I typically like to catch people up because not everybody comes to class every time. Maybe they haven't read this story. So I want to give a little background of this story, and that is that the whole conversation began in response to the inquiry of Vidura to sage Maitreya about the lineage of a great Prajapati and world emperor Swayambhuva Manu. He wanted to know the history. And so for those of you who are not aware, Vidura is the uncle of the 5 Pandavas, one of whom was the famous Arjuna, who is featured in the Bhagavad Gita, this conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. And so Vidura is his uncle. And he left home abruptly from the house of the Kurus, or the home of his other uncle who was blind materially and spiritually, because he was insulted. He was insulted by being called a Sudra, which is kind of another way for a lowlife, or maybe a redneck, or something. You might say something about somebody, Sudra. Oh, you're just a Sudra. So he leaves home and he's wandering around. He bumps into sage Maitreya, who starts teaching him how to pursue the goal of life. And this is a very relatable story, because many of us left home after becoming fed up with living surrounded by materially absorbed family and friends. Who has not had that experience, that they have bumped into a devotee somehow or other? They got a book, they met Krishna Bro on the street there singing his with mariachis or something, and somehow their life changed. They get a new idea about how to solve the problems of life. So this conversation kind of happens with somebody who's met Maitreya, and then he's learning how to live in the material world, and what is the goal of life, and how do I realize who I really am as a part and parcel of the Lord, who's ultimately Satchidananda, a eternal, wise, joy-filled, or blissful being. So in chapter 21, Vidura is kind of curious. Take me to the beginning. How do people get here in the first place? How do we get in this material world? And what is this all about? What's the goal of it all? What's the point of it all? When we take birth, then we grow, we reproduce, we dwindle, and we get old, and then we get diseased and we die. So what is the point? When you think about your life, how much time your parents have go to school, learn this, learn that. Why do we do it? Well, I have to get a job. Why do we do it? Because we have to make money. Why do we need money? We have to pay our rent. So there's a whole propaganda there from the time children are born in this material world to somehow or other go through this process. And in the end, what happens? We die. What's the point? You might as well, knowing that the end of life is that you're dying, you might as well just shoot yourself in the beginning and save yourself an enormous amount of time. Unless you understand what is the purpose of life, it's a lot of hard work just to end up in death. So he's asking, this is a really valuable question that we all should be asking. If the goal of life isn't just to maintain this body and go through these process of cycle of life, then what is it for? So in India, even today, people identify their lineage. This is a part of the conversation, that Swayambhuva Manu is a Prajapati, and he's conceiving tons of children, and that's just his duty. He's a son of Lord Brahma. But in India today, people identify their family lineage in terms of their gotra. Maybe you've heard this word, which acknowledges their ancestral ties to one of these Prajapatis, who are one of 27 sons of Lord Brahma. So in the family line from each of these Prajapatis, there's a gotra for each one. So the names of each of these gotras, they carries the name of one of the Prajapatis. And they're sages. They're not just people having kids. They're actually really advanced and enlightened being. And we particularly focus on 7 main rishis, or sapta rishis, and they are Kasyapa, Vashishta, Bhardwaj, Kapila, Atri, Vishwamitra, and Gautama. And you'll hear these names throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam as key players in our literature. And these sapta rishis, their whole purpose was not only to propagate children, but to propagate children in order to preserve spiritual knowledge to humanity for everyone's benefit. So that's a really important piece of it. It's not just having kids, they're having children, or special children, who will carry on this lineage of spiritual life. So that's a really important consideration in terms of having children. Another point about this is that in India, one's gotra is important to know because being aware of one's ancestry helps avoid what would be called inbreeding. Like if you're having, you're breeding dogs or horses or something, it's really important, the lineage, because it has a lot to do with the kind of outcome you have. In fact, sometimes, in Indian families, they will avoid 4 gotras, including their fathers, their mothers, their paternal grandmother, and their maternal and maternal grandmothers. Because marrying outside of these 4 gotras, it's said to help prevent birth defects or deformities in their children by keeping people from marrying within their same genetic roots. We always have this joke. I lived in Ireland for a while, and that mad Irishman because of the incestual relations. Yeah, that's why they're so crazy. But there's some truth to that in terms of, ancient times. You marry your sister or your cousin or something, and you might not have the outcome that you hope for. So there's a science to having children. It's not just some random activity like it's become today in Kali Yuga, that people, they want to have children. They need to do this very, very carefully, as it has a kind of a permanent impact, not only on your future family's life, but also on the impact of society. So it's a huge, serious activity, and one shouldn't take it up unless they really understand what they're signing up for. So Swayambhuva Manu, he was one of the sons of Brahma who was given the task of having children to benefit human society. And so he was taking this responsibility very, very seriously. He had 2 sons who ruled the world at that time. It's mentioned in this chapter, Priyavrata and Uttanapad. And it's described as the world at that time was divided up in 7 islands, pretty much like it is today. We have Asia, Europe, Africa, North America, South America, Australia, and Oceania. I had to look that up. What is Oceania? Which includes Australasia, Melanesia, Micronesia, and Polynesia. All these little islands are a thing, and they make up what used to be called, and I don't know what they call it now. Maybe it's still Oceania. I don't know. So Vidura is asking Maitreya about the entire lineage coming from Swayambhuva, especially about Kardama Muni, who, after he was instructed by Lord Brahma to create children, he prepared himself by performing many austerities on the bank of the river Saraswati for 10,000 years. And that is a very, very long time to be doing that. So and just think about his preparation, I don't even imagine living for, God, 100 years. Good luck with that, So we don't have a lot of time to get our lives together in order to prepare for having children. So actually it's explained that Kardama Muni, he, through his devotional life, his austerity, he won the favor of the Supreme Lord by being very strict and focused in his devotional life. And the Lord became very pleased with him, and then he appeared before him in his transcendental form face to face. And just like other personalities we read about in the Bhagavatam, like Dhruva Maharaj, he had a similar experience. He was 5, he went off, he performed great austerities, chanted Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, and Krishna was very pleased with his devotion, so he suddenly appeared before him. And just like Dhruva, Kardama Muni, he was so overwhelmed, if you can imagine, just suddenly Krishna's appearing before you. I can't even imagine. You become so overwhelmed that you fall flat on your face and you start probably crying and praying and offering obeisances. So just after the Lord appeared to Kardama Muni, in the same way that Dhruva, after he had done his all praying and praising and obeisances, he became quite sober. Kardama Muni also, he became sober, and he admitted, that, well, I've been performing all these austerities to satisfy my lustful desires to engage in sex life, to invite a soul into the human form of life for the benefit of human society. So he actually was dovetailing his material desire for a worthy purpose, to use it in Krishna's service. And that's an appropriate way for us to engage all our material desires in service. It's not like we should be guilting ourselves and shaming ourselves because we have material desires. Everyone has them. You have a body, it's a dead giveaway. We came to this material world. It's not, you can't hide, you can't hide, oh, I came here to save human society. No, you came here, you grew this body because you wanted to enjoy something. Nobody but you knows what that is, but we can sort of tell by what you're doing with your time what your desires are, right? So it's very instructive for us that not just for Prajapatis like Kardama Muni, but for every householder who takes up the duty of conceiving and raising children, that before they even think about trying to have a child, not only the father, but also the mother should be very, very clear about their intentions to conceive a child that will benefit human society before they engage in sex life. That has to come before, not after the fact. It's before. Obviously, if you have kids and they just pop out and you haven't done all that, well, there's no time like the present to start trying to cultivate Krishna consciousness in them. So this is important because the consciousness of the parents at the moment of conception attracts a particular living being into the womb. So there needs to be some thoughtful preparation to create the best possible environment where a great soul will take birth in a particular family. So the first thing an inspiring householder needs to do is to find a suitable marriage partner who shares their goal of life. Not everybody is passionate about Krishna consciousness. In fact, very few people are. So you may be attracted to someone and then, get entangled in a relationship, and then you find out, particularly around child raising, oh, I had a different idea. Did you? Oh, I was thinking we're going to do that with the kids. No, and now you've got the child there. You better have a plan. How are we going to cultivate them? And that conversation needs to happen before the child arrives. There has to be some conversation. I know people in the material world, they do, counseling, some kind of pastoral counseling with a priest or a pastor at least 6 times to discuss that before they sign that contract. So here's the thing, finding that person. How are you finding that person? So this was Kardama's concern, to find a wife whose qualities and personality matched his own. So when the Lord appeared to Kardama, the Lord explained to him that he'd already been tracking that. The Lord's in your heart. He knows what you're thinking. He knows what, you might be conscious of what your desire. Krishna knows. He knows what you're thinking. And he knows that Kardama is seriously looking for a suitable match. He's got you. He's got your back. It's based on what he'd been meditating on his heart for 10,000 years. I mean, that's a long time, and Krishna got it, during these years performing devotional service. Sometimes we don't even know what we desire till it shows up. You think, oh, I didn't know. God, how did I manifest that? Oh, I had this thing, some of you know, when I went to take care of my parents in 2000, I guess it was 2017 or 18, my father got dementia. And I have always been a person who liked to live in farms and grass, and here I'm living in Los Angeles on concrete. And, I love it here too, but I wanted to be around trees and flowers and farm, look out my back window and see something besides bricks. So anyway, my father gets sick and I had to go take care of him. I left my job and I moved to Virginia. And there I am, and I have space. People who know me know that when I was living here, I had a 2-foot by 6-foot plot in Madhava's little home in the corner there, and it was not a lot of space. And so it was like, I didn't know I had that desire to have the space. So I show up at my mother's home, and I'm given an entire basement, to myself. It's like more room. You could fit this whole temple of devotees in that basement. And I'm looking out my window, and it's like, I can only see forests and things like skunks and coyotes and deer, and I'm thinking, wow, that's amazing. I must have desired that. But the salt and the sweet rice was, I have to take care of my mom and my dad with dementia. So there's always, you've got to be really careful what you desire, because Krishna's going to give you that desire in a way that gets you free from that desire really quick. It's like, oh, this is amazing. But I had to pay. Nothing's for free in this material. You do pay something. So this is just really instructive that We don't see Kardama Muni trying to find a suitable partner by trying to different women out, okay, through dating or living with this one or that one. What we see in him, he's first approaching the Lord with his desire and trusting that when the time is right, the appropriate person will appear. Now, nowadays, it may be that a devotee decides being a householder and having children is a more appropriate path for them. So it's recommended that they consult, with senior devotees who have some experience with marriage before embarking on this very responsible task of finding a suitable partner. And also, while you're doing that, to pray to the Lord in your heart, to the deities, he's through his spiritual representative, his pure representative, for guidance, and waiting until they're completely sure in their heart that marrying this or that person is really blessed and sanctified by Krishna. You save yourself a lot of trouble if you do wait and find that person who is going to be a life partner, a compatible person in this endeavor to become Krishna conscious. So Maitreya says, after the Lord spoke to Kardama Muni, the Lord left him. And then Kardama, he completed his vows of austerity, and suddenly Swayambhuva Manu and his wife and daughter show up. I mean, I'm thinking, yeah, okay, there's something serendipitous about this. This is kind of a mystical moment. He's had this conversation. Krishna suddenly disappears. He finishes his last puja after 10,000 years, and there it is. They show up with the wife and the mother, and they're all ready. And Kardama Muni, he starts to approach Kardama Muni, and he starts well, first of all, they see him and he's all dirty. I guess he hasn't taken a bath in 10,000 years. I mean, that's what you do, and you do puja, right? Well, I don't know. He's doing fire puja. I mean, it's pretty crusty around a fire sacrifice. And he's got matted locks, and he's wearing rags, and he's presenting the emperor's coming, but he's aware. Now, he's not the body. He's something more. He's got the father-in-law. He has to think, okay, this is somebody I want to offer my daughter to and stuff, but he's a great saintly person, so I'm going to look past that. And he look at his spiritual identity. So in response to Swayambhuva showing up, Kardama Muni, he starts to glorify him, with so many praises and telling him stuff, how wonderful he is. I mean, I didn't copy all these things, but you can read them yourself. It's a huge list of things praising Swayambhuva Manu. And then he becomes silent. Kardama Muni, he just goes silent, which kind of made this emperor feel a little awkward. It says he was kind of shy. And you can imagine if somebody's praising you highly, how embarrassing that would be, especially if you're a real honest and humble devotee. It feels uncomfortable to be praised in that way. So then, coming back at Kardama Muni, he's praising him up and down and stuff, and telling him, his motive. He admits, he says, look, I have this daughter who I feel is really suitable to marry you, and I have so much affection for her. It's going to break my heart to let her go, but I can't fulfill my mission in life until she's fully situated in a marriage that is going to be a responsible marriage, that someone's going to take care of her. And most parents are very concerned about that. When you have kids, you want to find them a suitable partner. And we hope that they're going to make it, and 50% of the population gets divorced. And so we're just hoping that things are going to work out for them and that they find what their goal of life is. So in India today, if you ever talk to Indian people who have arranged marriage, and I have, because I'm interested in that topic sometimes, and it's kind of a weird situation. It's not quite like Kardama Muni, but the families are finding the person. And there's all kinds of astrology charts, websites and stuff, matchmaking. And it's the parents you're marrying. I mean, you got to marry the family. It's not just the person. So the parents have to approve. And the way they do it is they do a background check on the person to see what their reputation is, what their qualities is. And then if it looks like that they might be a match, then the one family will contact the other family, and let's get together. And usually it's the son's family coming to the daughter, or the daughter's family, and she's coming out with cookies and some drink or something and serving the family. And in this way, the prospective groom is looking to see if he has some chemistry. They're kind of in front of the family. And then there's a moment where they go in the back room and, the family is chit-chatting in the front room, and they get a few minutes to talk a little bit to see if they have some attraction, and then the meeting is done. They go home, and then the parents of the prospective male goes, what do you think? And then they're asking the prospective bride, oh, what do you think of him? And this way they get to say, not so much, and and it sounds like a really silly way to arrange marriage. I had an arranged marriage. It wasn't quite like that. But the good news about that is you save yourself a whole lot of heartache. If you move in with somebody for a couple of years, you get all, involved and stuff, and then you decide, no, I don't really want to marry them. Now you have the whole heartache of telling them and breaking up, and there's a huge grief process. It's much easier just to let your parents deal with it, and say, not so much, and they just go back to the papal and say, nope, we're not interested. Kind of like a business deal. It's a little strange, but that's how it works. So in today's verse, Kardama Muni, in verse 19, he says, therefore I accept this chaste girl as my wife. And Prabhupada explains how Kardama Muni had been practicing celibacy as a brahmachari, although he had decided to marry. And he was really clear that he did not want to be a householder for his entire life, because he wanted to adhere to the Vedic process of eventually becoming renounced. Well, when you look at this verse, and I think when that book came out, we had this notion that you just have a child and then you leave home. And we had that in our history sometimes. And it was very irresponsible. This is not the message of this verse, that you now start having children and then you abandon them. As particularly in this age, we are not in that kind of age. And even then, I would argue that this is not the full meaning of this verse, because Prabhupada was very, very clear about how important these children are, and in terms of nurturing them and being responsible. And not only that, they're great preaching. In fact, I would argue that having Krishna conscious children is one of the most important preaching activities we do. We might think, oh, I'm on the front line, I'm doing important preaching, and that's true. But as householders, that's a huge contribution. If you can even create one child who becomes a devotee, your destination is assured. If you have one child or one person in this world that takes to Krishna consciousness and becomes a pure devotee, your destination is assured. That's such a great contribution. And we see in Srila Prabhupada's life how his father, right from the time he was born, was focusing. He taught him Mridanga. He focused on him. That was his main goal. Please pray that my son will be a servant of Radharani. And of course, Srila Prabhupada is the best representative of Srimati Radharani. So the main message here, I think I want to bring or comment on this, is that we have a system in ISKCON today which is a little different than, fasting and practicing celibacy for 10,000 years. Srila Prabhupada taught us to, before a man and a woman try to conceive a child, they should chant 50 rounds minimum of the Hare Krishna mantra. And in the ancient times, you may have gone to feed the Brahmins and ask for your blessings. So now everybody in the neighborhood knows what you're doing. And it's like, it's Kali Yuga. You wouldn't let everybody know. But it's just such an important process. And Prabhupada says that the reason we have criminality in the world is because you have children who are unwanted. Just think about that. When you have a child you don't want, that are accidents that have been conceived in the back of a VW van or on the park bench in a drunken state on crack cocaine and stuff, what kind of consciousness of the living beings that are coming in that kind of situation? And he said that the unwanted children are the cause of so much criminality, because when children are not wanted, and that means their parents are not taking care of their education or their health properly, then they look for other places to get their need for love and belonging met, particularly in gangs and other places where other people meet each other who feel like they're outcasts of society. And some of you know also that I did ISKCON prison ministry for a while. and was corresponding with lots of maybe 10 prisoners, and every single one of them were children who had been physically, emotionally, and sexually abused by their parents or someone else. And when they get inside that prison, they told me that if a new inmate comes in, and they all want to know, what are you in here for? Oh, did you murder somebody? Was it voluntary manslaughter? What was it? Everybody wants to know, what was your reason to be here? If the reason for being here is for child sexual abuse, they practically murder the guy, because all of them are victims of basically child abuse. And so this is the real reason why this in the Srimad Bhagavatam is so elaborated on, because if we want to create a new world in this world, we've got to invite souls who are way showers, who are light bearers of Krishna consciousness. So that for me is the message today. And Prabhupada says at the end of the purport how Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he prayed for a ray of Vishnu, and that Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj showed up, and he's still preaching today in the form of Srila Prabhupada and his books and his disciples. So I want to stop here, and I know we don't have much time. Are there any comments or questions? Oh, Archita, your hand went so fast up. I can't wait to hear what your question is.
Hare Krishna, I want to know, is that basement in Virginia still available? Sounds like a good place for a retreat. Anyway, I just wanted to share. Before class, I asked your grandson, Abaya, what does your grandmom's name mean? What does Rambhoru mean? He said, I don't know. So I just wanted to share with you. In the 20th chapter of this canto, text number 24, I think it is, your name is there, Rambhoru, and it means, oh, pretty one.
I know. But it also means, and this is an interesting thing. Recently, I had lost my letter from Prabhupada when I got initiated. And I found out like 45, 50 years later, I'd been spelling it differently than Prabhupada had spelled it, Ramburu. So it's Rambhoru. And the Sanskrit scholar who told me my name in Germany said it was Rambhur. Now everything is that name. I can't change it now, but it breaks my heart that I didn't know. And it also means it's a description of Radharani's body, who is a gopi, And in the old days, it was fashionable to be fat as a gopi. So I had gained 30 pounds when I joined the Hare Krishna movement. I was addicted to halava, buttery halava, and Vishnu Tattva was a prep that was unique to Germans, where you had anise seeds, and it was like a laddu that had all kinds of spices in it. I've never eaten it anywhere else, but I would sneak into people's rooms to steal that stuff, And I thought when I got that name, because the name actually means one having smooth and slender legs that taper to the thighs, which means you have a really big butt, and I thought, wow, how did Prabhupada know that I'd gained 30 pounds? Because Prabhupada wasn't physically present, it was you put your name in those days, it was like that. So thank you for the question. Yeah, Haribol, yeah.
Thank you, Mataji. In this beautiful story, is the very idealistic Kardama Muni's marriage. But the important thing of this is that the desire of Lord Brahma ordering him to go, that was one. The other one, the Lord himself had a plan already. So he will come later on as Kapila. So then it develops that later on that everything works out perfectly.
Yeah.
Whatever, the desire that Kardama Muni had,
right,
along with the plans of the Lord. Now my question is that everything worked out perfectly there, beautiful for us to learn certain things, that now devotees, when they join, they always hope that maybe if I do things, like properly, it will be not as much same, but pretty close. But my question is, isn't it that inspirable that from nowadays being Kali Yuga, with the big baggage that we have and a lot of impious activities, and we just got the fortune that Srila Prabhupada engages in the service. So maybe it's not, I don't know if it's a question, maybe it's a comment that you can make, how is it that, sometimes devotees get frustrated because thinking I'm doing my best, I'm chanting, I'm being initiated, and even by Srila Prabhupada, many devotees' children, didn't have that great fortune for whatever reason they left or something. Anything that you can say or speak that we don't, dream and think, okay, it's going to be like that. Or we should just accept, okay, whatever happens, I do my best, I follow, but Krishna, whatever he gives me, because you might choose, or someone might tell you, your guru himself might tell you, okay, marry this person, and you marry that person, but it doesn't work along the road because many things before. Can you comment?
Yeah. Well, first of all, we're human beings. We're fallible human beings. And this romantic idea that now I have to marry somebody who is, or that I'm going to, or maybe I think that they're pretty, or they're handsome, or they're strong, or so we got enamored by some material qualities, and that we're somehow not underneath that, human beings who have, like you say, karma and things to work out in this life. But I believe, and in my experience is, that you have two notions of karma. You have the idea of karma where the material energy comes like Durga with the 3 prongs, and she's poking you to kind of force or to inspire you to take shelter of Krishna. Then you have, when we do take shelter of Krishna, then you have what's called Yogamaya, that everything that happens to you is tailor-made to help us realize Krishna, or lean more in, or reach more towards surrender. So good wife, good husband, bad wife, good husband, all good reason to chant Hare Krishna. Either way, whatever life you've got, whatever people in your life you have, the whole goal is to learn how to absorb oneself in the holy name, in devotional service, cultivate Krishna consciousness, and share it with others. So it may not be that your birth family appreciates you, but you may have a whole lot of other spiritual children who do. And whether you have kids or not everybody can have children. Doesn't matter. The thing is your spiritual children. And I just think we need to focus on how do we be an example for Krishna consciousness, and leave it up to Krishna, to who is inspired by you or whatever. And the story's not over yet. You might have kids who, at the fag end of their life, they come back to remember, oh yeah, my mom and dad taught me that. And now at 60 years old, they come back to picking it up. So I wouldn't be too hopeless about our children. I think they go through stages like we do, and they'll come back. If you plant the seed, they come back. Yeah. Subhash.
We've heard throughout the years that, it takes a village to raise a child.
Yes.
And I think that one of the issues of ISKCON is that it's a very difficult situation.
Yes.
Because we have children, but then they go to public school.
Yeah.
And then that village that they're getting trained by is contradictory to what Krishna consciousness is. So it appears that having children these days is very difficult, very challenging.
It is.
And one should be very committed to having children in that way, but really take care of them. I mean,
yes,
very, very, very important.
Yes.
There's so many families that I know that, they had children, and they tried their best to help the child grow up to be a Krishna conscious devotee, but the village wasn't strong enough to help or assist in that activity. So we should maybe, speak about those things as much as possible. That if someone, like you said, if 2 adults are wanting to have a child, everybody in the community knows what they're up to. And that shouldn't be a bad thing. It should be a good thing, because maybe there's just going to be a child that can be very Krishna conscious and have spread the Krishna conscious movement. So it should be more than a family situation. It should be a village situation.
Yeah, I agree.
And we should help. Like we have children here that have taken birth right here in New Dwarka, and we should try to protect those children and encourage them, and bless them. Be a devotee,
Totally.
and be successful in life.
Yeah. We have in Melbourne, I was in Melbourne for 2 years before I moved to this farm, and they have, I was telling the girls yesterday, they have 30 Bhakti Vriksha groups around the temple. So, and each one of those have like 100 people or something. I have never seen, the temple is half the size of this. It's so tiny. And on Janmashtami we have 4 places because nobody can fit in the temple. But they are so on it as a householder around the community. Together, they work together. They create retreats. It's a constant year-round. They have a WhatsApp that they're all the time communicating with educational things, play things, going places with the entire group of kids. And they're not living in the temple. Nobody pays them to do it. They don't pay for a gurukul. The kids do go to public school, but they do an enormous amount of extracurricular. So it does work if the householders decide we're going to do something for these kids. And when I first arrived in Melbourne, a 15-year-old boy died in India. Of course, that was a big shock to everyone in the community. But the good news was that he died in a bathroom in, I guess it was Bombay, someone's home. And one of those heaters, you know, those gas heaters that heat the water up, you know how it's on the wall? He got asphyxiated by that. Somehow it was dysfunctional, and the parents were knocking on the door, and after 40 minutes he was not responsive. They opened the door and he was on the ground. They took him to the hospital. He died a few days later, but he was chanting. He was completely out of his mind, but he was chanting. Their dad was like, wow, where did that come from? He was, you know, didn't seem to me such a serious devotee, but he had been immersed all around him by Krishna conscious other people, you know, and growing up as a kid, and it went somewhere. So there's hope. We just don't know if, you know, Krishna will think of us at the point of death. Yeah.
Hare Krishna. As an aspiring brahmachari, I think about this a lot, and recently I heard there's a statewide mandate in California that you can't breed dogs because there's so many homeless dogs and so many stray dogs and dogs already existing. So if one wanted a purebred dog, they have to go through so much trouble of like finding one out of state, paying a ton of money, being a part of that process. And sometimes living in the city of LA, I'm thinking, wow, yeah, why don't we just make a mandate, you know? But ultimately, you hit the nail on the head with the class, which is to like avoid speculation about marriage and sex life. The desire or the standard as given in this verse and what Prabhupada says is for that person to desire to bring a pure devotee into their life.
Yes.
And by meditating like that and meditating on the pure devotee, they're always meditating on the pure devotee.
Right. And gosh, try chanting 50 rounds. Who wants to have sex life after you've had chanted 50 rounds? It's a moot point. But now it's done as a service and a duty. Because the more lust that's in the sex act, the less intelligent the child will be. That's an Ayurvedic piece of information. So, you know, if you're going to do it properly. You know, there's a whole science behind it, and there's more to it than what I've just shared here. So if you're interested, you can come over and we'll talk about it. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.